you ever been in the middle of a conversation, laughing, nodding, saying all the right things, and suddenly felt like a ghost haunting your own body? You're watching this version of you perform. You're the perfect employee in the meeting, the chill friend at the bar, the reliable anchor at home. But in the quiet gaps between those roles, a cold realization settles in. The person the world sees isn't actually there. You've been told your whole life to be yourself, but you've realized a terrifying secret. You have no idea who that person is. And here's the paradox that keeps you up at night. What if the true self you're looking for doesn't actually exist? Most of us treat our identity like a hidden treasure map. We think if we just travel far enough, meditate long enough, or buy the right journals, we'll eventually unearth a solid, golden me that finally feels real. This is where most psychology videos actually miss the point. They focus too much on the psychology side and forget neuroscience. And, unfortunately, neuroscience has an uncomfortable truth for you. There is no static, authentic self hiding in a dusty corner of your psyche, waiting for a grand reveal. Your brain reconstructs your identity with every experience, every interaction, and every memory you reinterpret. That feeling of fragmentation you feel sometimes, that's not a bug. It's a feature. It's evidence that you're trying to force a dynamic, flowing process into a static box. When you stop trying to find who you are and start understanding who you are becoming, everything shifts. Today, we're going to dive deep on this topic. We're going to explore why the harder you search for yourself, the more lost you'll feel, and how a 100-year-old psychological concept might be the only way to finally stop performing and start existing. First, we need to understand the psychology side, then advance to the neurological and practical part. Carl Jung called this process the search for the self. As individuation, it is the continuous and often agonizing process of integrating various versions of yourself into a coherent narrative. And that includes the parts of you that you'd rather pretend don't exist. Your ambition disguised as humility, your rage hidden under performative politeness, your insecurity masked as indifference. Jung called these rejected pieces the shadow. You likely spend more energy repressing your shadow than you do living authentically. Today, most people report living on autopilot, dissociated from themselves because they don't understand how psychological integration actually works. First, we're going to dismantle the myth of the fixed true self. Then, we'll explore why you must confront your shadow before any real integration can happen. We'll untangle the crucial difference between necessary social masks and psychological phoniness. Finally, I'll reveal the practical neuropsychological tools that allow this integration to happen without paralyzing self-judgment. Becoming your true self is about consciously remembering who is wearing the masks. This journey begins with a truth that will reorganize how you think about your entire identity. Let's start with the fundamental truth most people waste decades trying to ignore. You aren't going to find your true self because it isn't lost. It is being built in this very second. Through every choice you make, every reaction you have, and every thought you either entertain or reject. Shifting from discovery to construction changes your entire approach to authenticity. The idea that there is a fixed essence of who you are is comforting. It sounds profound to say, I'm finding myself. But neuropsychologically, that's like trying to catch the wind with a butterfly net. Your brain doesn't store a definitive version of you in a master file. It reconstructs you constantly through a process called memory reconsolidation. If you keep looking for a fixed me, you'll spend your life chasing a ghost. Every time you access a memory about who you are, your brain isn't just playing a video file. It's rebuilding that memory in real time, colored by your current mood, your present context, and new information. Researchers at NYU found that autobiographical memories are altered every single time we retrieve them. The story you tell about who I really am is under constant revision. Your true self isn't an archaeological find. It's a live jazz performance. You're improvising based on a theme. You never play the same set twice. Jung understood this intuitively. He described individuation not as a destination, but as a journey. He wrote that the self is not a fixed point, but the process of becoming conscious. Here is the paradox. The more you search for a static version of yourself to uncover, the more fragmented you feel. You're trying to photograph the ocean and then complaining that the photo doesn't move. Let's put that into perspective. You might think, but I have core values. I have personality traits that have always been there. I'm this, and that. You're right. Temperament studies show biological predispositions that remain relatively stable. The Big Five personality traits, for instance, one of the most peer-accepted personality tests, show consistency over time. But even these are plastic. Your extroversion at 20 looks different than your extroversion at 40. You have a musical theme, yes, but the variations are infinite. Neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett revolutionized our understanding of emotions by showing that feelings which seem automatic are actually brain constructions based on learned concepts. If your emotions are built dynamically, imagine your identity. You aren't a statue waiting to be chipped out of the marble. You are the sculptor, the marble, and the finished work, all at once. So, in summary, your shadow isn't your evil side. The Jungian shadow is simply everything you've decided cannot be part of your conscious identity. It's the impulses, desires, and traits you learned to repress because they didn't fit the image you wanted to project. And the problem is that you cannot integrate what you refuse to acknowledge. Imagine you identify as a selfless, kind person. That's your conscious persona. But there is a part of you that resents giving, that feels envy when others succeed, that wants to be selfish. That part doesn't vanish just because you ignore it. It goes into the shadow, and from the shadow, it pulls your strings. You might subtly sabotage a successful colleague, or do favors while secretly martyring yourself. You project the selfishness you can't accept in yourself onto everyone else. The neuroscience of emotional suppression confirms the cost of this. James Gross at Stanford has shown that when you actively suppress emotions, you don't delete them. You create neural dissonance. Your limbic system is still screaming, but your prefrontal cortex is working overtime to muffle the sound. This drains your cognitive resources and spikes your physiological arousal. Your blood pressure rises. Your immune system weakens. You pay a physical tax for denying parts of yourself. And sometimes, you're also hurting other people, not only yourself. But here's the kicker. Your shadow contains gold too. You repress light. If you grew up in an environment where ambition was shamed as arrogance, you might have shoved your own greatness into the shadow. Jung famously said, "I'd rather be whole than good," because being good by a narrow definition means amputating vital parts of your soul. Being whole means integrating everything, even the uncomfortable stuff. Now let's talk about social masks versus phoniness. We've all heard the advice, just be yourself. It sounds great until you realize it's socially suicidal and neurologically naive. You don't act the same way with your boss as you do with your toddler or your best friend. You shouldn't. Adapting socially isn't fake. Jung called these adaptations personas, functional social masks. So the problem isn't having masks, my friend. It's forgetting that you're wearing one. Think of the persona as a social interface. When you're presenting a project, you activate a professional version of yourself. Higher focus, formal language, emotional control. With friends, you relax those borders. Neither version is lying. They are different expressions of the same neural system, adapted for context. Social neuroscience confirms this through neural coupling. Hyperscanning studies, scanning two brains during interaction, show that our brains sync up with those around us. This mirroring happens automatically. You adjust your tone, pace, and posture to create rapport. And notice that this isn't manipulation. It's high-level relational intelligence. The crisis occurs when you lose objective self-awareness. When you're so fused with the mask that you forget there is a you choosing to wear it. Psychologists call this over-identification. In those scenarios, you aren't adapting. You're dissociating. When you adapt consciously, your medial prefrontal cortex, associated with self-reflection, stays active. When you dissociate, that activation drops. You're on social autopilot. Rewind that part if needed. This is a very practical acknowledgement. If we were talking about theater, for example, you want to be a technical actor in your own life, not the method actor who frequently loses themselves in the role and loses their mind. The technical actor knows exactly where they end and the character begins. They can give a brilliant performance because they remain the master of the craft. Let me show you how this works. There is a neurobiological reason why you cannot shame yourself into being a better person. When you judge yourself harshly, you activate the threat defense circuits in your brain, the same ones that fire if a predator is chasing you. Your nervous system goes into lockdown, and in threat mode, deep psychological change is neurologically impossible. Integration requires safety. Dr. Kristen Neff's research shows that self-compassion has 3 components: mindfulness, noticing pain without exaggerating it; common humanity, knowing imperfection is the human baseline; and self-kindness, knowing how to deal with yourself. When you practice self-kindness, you activate the mammalian caregiving system, mediated by oxytocin. You essentially become your own compassionate parent. Contrast this with self-criticism. Functional MRI scans show that harsh self-critique activates the amygdala, alarm, and the dorsal anterior cingulate, social pain. You are literally attacking yourself. You cannot integrate your shadow while your brain is in a state of civil war. The data is clear. People with high self-compassion have higher intrinsic motivation and greater resilience. Failure isn't an existential threat to their identity. It's just data in the growth process. If you want to face your shadow, the parts of you that are ugly or weak, you need a floor of psychological safety. Without compassion, you stay trapped in a cycle of judgment, denial, and further fragmentation. Psychological integration isn't a mystical event like most YouTube videos make it out to be. It's a daily practice. Your brain is wired by evolution for social survival, not existential authenticity. To go against that default programming, you need specific neuropsychological tools, and here they are. The Individuation Toolkit, Parts Dialogue, Internal Family Systems. When you feel internal conflict, stop asking, should I or shouldn't I? Instead, personify the sides. Name the ambitious part and the scared part. Write a dialogue between them. By externalizing the conflict, you move from limbic reaction to cortical observation. Shadow mapping. Once a week, look at who triggered you. Who made you irrationally angry? Ask, what trait do they have that I refuse to see in myself? This turns irritation into an atlas of your own repressed potential. The compassion protocol. In moments of failure, use the 3-step phrase, "This is a moment of suffering. Everyone feels this sometimes. May I be kind to myself in this moment." It takes 10 seconds, but it interrupts the amygdala hijack and shifts you back into a state where you can actually learn from the mistake. The authenticity check-in. At the end of the day, ask, when did I feel most connected to myself? When did I use a mask consciously? And when did I get lost in the role? This builds the muscle of the medial prefrontal cortex. You've learned that finding yourself is a myth, that the shadow is a goldmine, and that masks are tools. But knowledge without application is just intellectual clutter. Here's the truth that ties it all together. Authenticity is not a destination. It is a quality of attention. It isn't about reaching a final, perfect state where all your conflicts are resolved. That's a fantasy. Authenticity is the ability to be present with whatever you are experiencing right now, including the contradictions, including the parts you haven't fixed yet. It's being the person who notices the mask while they are wearing it. You will never finish integrating your shadow because you are a work in progress. Your 25-year-old self has different shadows than your 45-year-old self. That's not a failure, that's growth. Start where it hurts. Dissonance is an invitation. Treat projections as maps. Your triggers are your teachers. Practice micro-compassion. Build the neural pathways of safety. You will fail at this. You'll get lost in your ego. You'll snap at people. You'll hide. That doesn't invalidate the work. Every time you notice you've drifted and you pull yourself back to awareness, you are winning. You are literally thickening the neural connections of a more integrated you. If this breakdown changed how you view your own identity crisis or those internal contradictions, hit the like button. It helps this deeper psychological work reach the people who are tired of surface-level advice. If you want more content that bridges the gap between deep Jungian philosophy and hard neuroscience, subscribe to the channel. We don't oversimplify the complex. We give you the tools to navigate it. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember, you aren't looking for who you are. You are choosing who you are becoming, one act of compassionate attention at a time.